Hi everyone, my name is Gabriel and this is the Hour of the Raven, your channel for everything Ravenloft, RPG, Dungeons and Dragons, and horror.
Today, we are going to unveil the past and secrets of Malokyo Adair, the tyrannical ruler of Envidia and the sinister Dukar, prophesied to bring about the end of the Vistani and the land of the mists. Are you ready? In the darkness of our cells in the dungeons of Karina's citadel, we await countless tortures and public execution, unfairly accused of murders that we did not commit. Next to our cell, an old and broken Vistani also awaits execution by Malokyo's forces. Before he dies, however, he whispered to us the dark secrets about the Dukar and the apocalyptic prophecy surrounding the fearsome Malokyo Adere.
Hour of the Raven.
We have nothing to discuss. The future belongs to me, and you forfeited any place in it by consorting with that Vistani trash. I mean to purge every last one of her kind from the world, dead man. Do not doubt that for a moment. Malokyo Adere is the tyrannical despot who rules the land of Envidia, and he is also the Dukar, a dark messiah prophesied by the Vistani. Malokyo carries in his blood a powerful malignant lineage, being the grandson of the evil Dark Lord Vlad Drakov of Falkovnia, and the son of the treacherous Gabriel Adair and the incubus known as the Gentleman Kala. Part human and part demon, Malokyo is a Cambion and manifests many supernatural powers. He is the Dukar, and his arrival is prophesied by the Vistani as a sign of apocalyptic events and tragedies. As a character, Malokyo Adair adapts to the setting of Gothic horror, the trope of a dark messiah, a child of demonic heritage, destined to bring about the apocalypse. To me, the story of Malokyo Adair is strongly inspired by films such as Rosemary's Baby, and also the film series The Omen, which tell the story of a macabre child predestined to be the Antichrist, from his childhood to his ascension to power. Before the setting was discontinued by Wizard of the Coast, the big metaplot of the setting was on its way to unravel the mysteries of the Gentleman Kala plan and his evil offspring, which would play a central role in the events of the time of unparalleled darkness. My impression is that the infamous Malokyo will play an important role in these events, but given the discontinuity of the camping setting, we may never know what his effective role in these events would be. Malokyo Adere looks like a normal human, with the notable characteristic of having a sixth finger in each hand. Soon after his birth, signs of his supernatural and demonic heritage could already be noticed, and he grew abnormally, and within a few weeks he was already the height of a grown child, and he was walking and talking. The child, with accelerated growth and development, reached adulthood with little more than a year old, and now appears to be a handsome man, just over 20 years old, but with a disturbing aspect. He has a pale complexion, and a black hair that he wears at the shoulders. His face is marked by a square chin, a firm stance, and disturbing black eyes, which seem to emanate his sinister intentions and malignancy. Malokyo always dresses entirely in black, and can often be seen wearing military clothing, including his carved and ornate armor. He hides his sixth finger of his hands, wearing black leather gloves, and he is never seen without his sword, the Vistani's Bane. The ruler of Envidia is cruel and sadistic, and since his childhood, he already shown a propensity for acts of extreme cruelty. He inherited his mother's charisma and beauty, but has a dominant persona whose will should not be resisted or challenged. Few can bear the pressure of his stare for long, and he does not hesitate to use his supernatural gifts to influence the behavior and will of those around him. Malocchio is consumed by intense hatred against the Vistani, against his mother, and some say that even against himself for his heritage of Vistani blood. Selfish and manipulative, Malocchio sometimes still behaves in a childish way, being vindictive and spiteful, and does not like to be contradicted, having uncontrollable and bloodthirsty bursts of anger when he is frustrated in his plans. The general and absolute military leader of Invidia is a warrior, but he also learned the dangerous and insidious tricks of a thief. He always carries very high quality equipment, usually made from cold iron, and is always accompanied by loyal soldiers, magically influenced by his supernatural powers. Like his mother, he has the power of the evil eye, and through his gaze he can cast countless supernatural spells on his enemies, bewitching them, causing fear, paralysis, and even sending mental suggestion and compulsions. As a Dukat, Malocchio is immune to the Vistani's curses and their evil eye, and he is also immune to their magical divinations. Unable to predict his steps and his future, he becomes an even more dangerous threat to the Vistani. Just like his mother, however, he is unable to use his own evil eye against the Vistani, and even those who have only part of the blood heritage of these nomadic people demonstrate strong resistance to his charms. In addition to influencing the people around him, Malocchio has the power to summon and command the beasts of the woods to do his bidding, being able to conjure wolves, snakes, and crows to fulfill his dark purposes. His demonic heritage makes him resistant to ordinary weapons, and he can only be wounded by magical weapons. He is also resistant to magic, fire, and electricity, and is immune to all types of poisons. One of his most powerful abilities is the summoning of the mists to teleport him anywhere he wishes, and some believe that he could even transport himself and others out of the demiplane of dread if he wished. However, this ability is now limited thanks to a powerful spell from Madame Eva, which imprisoned him to the borders of Invidia, where he can still use this ability freely. Although he rarely faces a situation in which he is overwhelmed, reports indicate that he is a coward, and when he finds himself in real danger, he does not hesitate to use his gifts to escape to some safe place inside Invidia. Malocchio ascended to the throne of Invidia using his supernatural powers and dethroning his mother, Gabrielle Adair, in a coup. Despite controlling a powerful military force and exercising a firm control over most of the realm, he is not the Dark Lord of Invidia, nor does he aspire to this position. Malocchio knows that the post of Dark Lord would confine him eternally to Invidia's domain, and he knows that the death of his mother can attract the attention of the dark powers over him. This fear was perhaps the only factor that prevented him from murdering Gabrielle during his coup. But what secrets surrounding famous Dukat, prophesied to be the herald of so many bad omens and tragedies on the land of the mists? Malocchio Adair comes from an extremely malignant lineage. His grandfather is Vlad Dracov, the Dark Lord of Falkovnia, who for a time kept the beautiful half-Vistani Isabella Adair as a slave. Isabella managed to escape Drakov's clutches, but found that she was pregnant. Her daughter, Gabrielle Adair, would inherit her father's wickedness, and would also become a Dark Lord for her own crimes and sins. Malocchio's grandmother, Isabella, had predicted in her Tarocca cards that Gabrielle should not have children, otherwise she would bring great suffering to herself and all those around her. If the bad omens prophesied by the cards wasn't enough, Gabrielle was also cursed by her own mother when she abandoned her to die in the clutches of a werewolf. Gabrielle was cursed by Isabella to be betrayed by her own children, not realizing her son's wickedness until it was too late. Gabrielle traced her path of crimes and evil to the throne of Envidia, and despite keeping many lovers, she always took care with herbs and medicinal secrets to avoid becoming pregnant. All of that would change when a strange gentleman arrived in the city of Carina. In the year 746 of the Barovian calendar, a strange visitor arrived at Castel Lupet, a beautiful man with deep black eyes, and Gabriella there was immediately enveloped by his magnetism. This mysterious stranger, known as the Gentleman Caller, is an incubus, a demon of unknown purposes, who has spread his demonic seed through the lands of the mists. Gabrielle was swept away by the gentleman's presence and took him to her quarters. After a torrid night with Gabrielle, this stranger disappeared as mysteriously as he had arrived, and Gabrielle remembered nothing about this night, only having a vague memory of the dark eyes of her lover and the name Gentleman Caller. Shortly afterwards, she discovered that she was pregnant. Malocchio's pregnancy was accelerated, and in a few months Gabrielle went into excruciating labor, which lasted 3 days. When the child was finally born, she was normal in every way, except for the 6th finger in each of his hands. She named the child Malocchio due to the supernatural gaze of the Gentleman Caller, who had bewitched her. The baby Malocchio in a few days started to walk and talk, and in just a few weeks was as tall as a grown child. Sinister rumors circulated the strange boy, who grew up abnormally, and many said that the strange accidents occurred around him, and he seemed to have control over the beasts of the woods. It was also evident that the sinister child was evil and sadistic. Sometimes, he commanded flocks of birds to crash into the walls of Castel Lupet, just to have fun watching their death and suffering. When he discovered he was able to influence the servants with his will, he began to involve them in cruel games and intrigues for his own enjoyment. It was obvious that the child had a supernatural inheritance, and Gabrielle read his future with Madame Eva Tarocca deck, and discovered that he was a Ducar, the Dark Messiah who was prophesied to destroy the Vistani. In the Vistani tradition, a Ducar is a male Vistani who is born with the gift of the sight. The prophecies of the Vistani say that a Ducar will someday be responsible for the destruction of all the Vistani people, perhaps even of the land of the mists. For this reason, all Vistani tribes adopt the infanticide of Vistani boys who reveal their gift of sight to prevent the rise of a new Ducar. One of the most famous Ducars was Scosa, the Vistani who prophesied the events of the Grand Conjunction, which almost destroyed the Demiplane of Dread. Gabrielle always had great resentments for the Vistani, who rejected her and her mother in the past, and believed that Malocchio could be a weapon that, under her influence, would take revenge on the recluse nomadic people. She then educated Malocchio, feeding him a great hatred for the Vistani. As she had always done with all the men around her, she tried to keep Malocchio under her influence, but the young man was immune to his mother's powers. In the year 747 of the Barovian calendar, just a year after his birth, Malocchio had already become a young adult of about 18 years old and orchestrated a coup to remove his mother from power. Using his own supernatural gifts, he treacherously undermined his mother's power and influence. During the events of the Carina Harvest Festival, Malocchio imprisoned, tortured, and maddened Gabriella there, removing the illusions that blocked her mind and allowing her to fully recall the horrors of the night she spent with the Gentleman Caller. The rise of Malocchio Adair to the throne of Envidia would give him the means to initiate his great plans for the destruction of the Vistani. he was drawn to a dark destiny, a call to fulfill his role as the Dukar. However, the mysterious Madame Eva decided to act to prevent the Dukar from fulfilling his evil fate. The leader of the tribe of the Zaravan performed a powerful ritual to create a sphere of binding, a small black sphere that, if thrown at Malokio's feet, would shatter and mystically imprison him within the limits of the domain of Invidia. As Malokio was beyond Madame Eva's divinations, she teamed up with a group of adventurers to accomplish the feat of approaching the Dukar, and then throw the sphere of binding at Malokio's feet. In the decadent cliff house near the city of Karina, this band of adventurers looked for Malokio. In their search, they ended up releasing Gabriella there from her prison. She was attacked in sequence by the Midnight Slasher, and only survived such attacks thanks to the intervention of these adventurers. In the tumultuous battle that ensued between Malokio and his allies, Gabrielle, the Midnight Slasher, and the heroes, the sphere of binding was shattered at Malokio's feet, and the Dukar found himself trapped in the kingdom he has just conquered. Wounded and frightened by Madame Eva's powerful magic, he teleported himself to Castle Lupet. In his castle, he was seized with a mad rage, destroying objects and even killing servants. He commanded his forces to recapture his hated mother, but hesitated to kill her, fearing that the Dark Powers would make him the new Dark Lord of Invidia. Madame Eva's mystical prison could one day be broken, but he didn't know how anyone could escape the Dark Lord's condition. Wounded and maddened, Gabrielle was left to die in the Dreadwoods, and was saved from death by her former lover, Maton Blanchard. The shape-shifting Wolfware rescued Gabrielle and helped her to recover. The couple headed north together, out of reach of Malokio's forces. Malokio consolidated his power over Invidia, using his charisma, leadership, and supernatural gifts to convert allies. Governing with an iron fist, he re-established a centralized government, ending the chaos that ensued during his mother's reign. His government does not tolerate dissidents, and Malokio created a secret police, the Lord's Men, who infiltrate society, acting as informants and loyal defenders of Malokio. While Malokio consolidated his power over Invidia, Maton and Gabrielle headed north, and she occupied Castle Unadora, using her gifts to win the support of the Grundarakite rebels that now dominated the northern part of the domain. With control over most of Invidia, Malokio imposed heavy fees and began to fund the expansion and training of his military forces. Through the Falkovian trade enclave that had been established in the capital of Karina during Gabrielle's chaotic government, Malokio forged an alliance with the bellicose kingdom of Falkovia, and countless mercenaries from that realm arrived in Invidia, helping to train Invidia's forces and to strengthen their numbers. Until unaware of their kinship, the bellicose Vlad Drakov sees Malokio as a younger version of himself and an important military ally for his constant plans of conquest. Malokio's tyrannical government also expanded the persecution against the Vistani, launching an extermination and genocide plan. The Vistani were captured and tortured by Malokio, while he searched for a way to break Madame Eva's mystical imprisonment. Without ever finding a way to break his condition, he continued with his plan to exterminate the Vistani in all the land of the mists, even sending soldiers outside the borders of Invidia to exterminate traveling caravans. These invasions of neighboring kingdoms made relations with the kingdom of Borca and Barovia very strained, and recently he even came into direct conflict with the dominion of Citicus. Malokio became involved in a conspiracy with Azrael Dak to try to dethrone Lord Soth. Lord Soth, former Seneschal, betrayed his master and conspired with Malokio to create small attacks and distractions on the border of Invidia and Citicus. Malokio began to demand from Lord Soth the surrender of a group of Vistani known as the Wanderers, who lived under his protection in Citicus, and in the face of the Black Knight's refusal, Invidia began a series of small attacks in the frontier. When Lord Soth began to distrust Azrael, the dwarf became even more daring and bribed part of Malokio's forces to make a full invasion and direct attack on Nedragard Keep. Malokio discovered the dwarf's betrayal and assisted an adventurer named Ganelon, giving him equipment and the means to sabotage Azrael's profane ritual. Invidia's army marched against Nedragard Keep, forcing Lord Soth to command the defense of his kingdom. Azrael's profane ritual had unexpected effects, thanks to the intervention of the adventurer Ganelon, sent by Malokio, and a huge sphere of darkness rose over Nedragard Keep, plummeting over the battling forces of Soth and Malokio, and burning everyone in black flames. Malokio was furious at the destruction of important military detachments, and despite Lord Soth's disappearance, his fragile alliance with Azrael was broken. He now focuses on rebuilding his military troops and finally establish his absolute dominance over Invidia. Malokio's cruelty and fury drive his desire for revenge and extermination against the Vistani and his mother. His attempts to win back the northern region of Invidia have failed, and the Gundarakite rebels have taken advantage of the high terrain and the defenses of Castle Unadora to repel Malokio's forces. In addition, the forests surrounding the castle are the stage of constant attacks by wolf beasts, which decimate the groups of scouts and spies sent by Malokio. He has vowed to flay alive Gabriella there and hang her on the walls of Castle Unadora. However, he knows that murdering his mother can make his prison on the borders of Invidia permanent, as he will probably become the new Dark Lord of the domain. He recently discovered that he has a half-sister, the young Lucita there, and now have new ideas on how to act. He intends to capture Gabrielle and Lucita and imprison both under his control, using his half-sister's life as a leverage against his mother, a source of numerous psychological and physical tortures that he intends to impose on her. While seeking revenge, Malokio continues his constant search for some way to break the mystical prison imposed on him by Madame Eva, to finally fulfill his accursed fate and destroy all the Vistani and the Land of the Mists. When the old Vistani finishes his grim tale, we hear footsteps of soldiers coming down the hall. The Vistani hurriedly murmurs to us that we should not be afraid. When the time comes, we must remember the face of true evil. There is no time for further explanations, and soon the door to our cells is opened, and we are dragged by soldiers and taken out of the citadel. Through the streets of Carina, we are stoned by the angry mob and taken to a square where we are tied to poles. With horror, we realize that we will be burned alive in the public square in an execution for the crimes of the Midnight Slasher. Beside us, some Vistanis are also awaiting execution, and among them, the old man who told us such macabre secrets. Under a cloudy sky, we wait for an interminable time, until, at nightfall, the soldiers announce the arrival of the tyrannical Malokio. The Duca takes his place to watch the executions, and orders the executioner to start lighting the pyres. We hear the screams of the first burned victims, as the executioner approaches with a torch. The old Vistani beside us yells at us, "Do not be afraid and direct your fury. When you are finally free, look for Ezra anchorites in Borca for a cure of your affliction. Soon, the executioner also sets the pyre of the old Vistanis on fire, and as he screams, we see the clouds open over the night sky, and the gruesome scene is lit by the silver light of the full moon. In our imprisonment and torment, we had forgotten our cursed condition, and soon we are overcome by intense pains of our transformation into bloodthirsty werewolves. The chains that imprison us break, and we hear the screams of the crowd. Soldiers attack us, but our wild fury directs us toward a single target as we launch ourselves against the Ducar, manipulated by the words of the Vistani. Our claws hurt Malocchio, and the frightened tyrant teleports away from the sight. Our minds are filled with wild fury, and events become a blur in our memories. When we finally recover consciousness, we wake up in some forest, covered in blood. Throughout the day, we wander in search of a destination, fearing that we are being sought by Malocchio's forces. As the night approaches, we move away from roads and inhabited places, fearing to cause further damage in the light of the full moon. At nightfall, just before the rise of the moon, we find a shadowy figure dressed in black armor. The dark presence of this individual compels our will, and we soon realize that we are enslaved by the presence and gaze of this pale warrior. Come, creatures of the night, you will be suitable servants for my purposes. Join us, subscribe to this channel, and together we will explore what dark destiny awaits us in the hands of the monstrous Duke Gundar, the former Dark Lord of Gundarak.